This is the Dallas Morning News.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into SportsDay Insider presented by the Dallas Morning News. I am Kevin Sherrington, joined by my old pal Evan Grant. We don't have David Moore with us this week. David was just too busy for us. No time for us this week. I think he's still in mourning for the Cowboys' playoff chances, which were pretty much eliminated on Monday night against the Bengals.
I think David's got bigger things right now than us.
Yeah.
At Texas Capital, we know that the path to greatness isn't for the faint of heart. It's full of chances and opportunities with no promises. We know because we help clients and communities achieve greatness every day. Texas Capital is a full-service financial services firm founded and headquartered in Dallas, Texas. Our customized solutions were built to keep your business moving forward. Please visit texascapital.com to learn more. That's texascapital.com. Texas Capital is the collective brand name for the Texas Capital Bank and its separate non-affiliate banks and wholly owned subsidiaries. For deposit products, member FDIC.
Another spectacular flop by the Cowboys. I tell you, this team has figured out more ways to lose and more silly ways to lose than any team that I can recall. I mean, it is just phenomenal. They had the opportunity there at the end of the game to win it, obviously, and there was a punt block by Nick Vigil. Did a great job getting through the middle of the line. Goes up, partially blocks the punt. It more or less goes straight up. At best, it's going to be about a 20, 25-yard punt. The ball comes down, and then that defensive back, whose name we can't pronounce, Omuriarie or something to that effect, who had been re-signed just that morning. Of course, he's played for on and off for the Cowboys all year. Turns around, tries to scoop it up. The ball bounces up, as a football will do, you know. It's got those points on both ends. So it's not exactly easy to pick up when it's on the bounce. It bounces off his left shoulder. The Bengals recover, and then they drive down, and game over for the Cowboys. Micah Parsons was practically apoplectic at that point. He was also very upset after the game when they heard the news about DeMarvion Overshown, who had returned from a knee injury, a major knee injury, and was just having a pretty spectacular season. He shows so much potential as a linebacker, much in the mold of Parsons. He's not as powerful as Micah Parsons is, but he's at least as fast. And anyway, he has blew out all three of the major ligaments in his knee, and they have not announced yet when he will have surgery or exactly what he's going to have done. But my guess is that he will be out for a year. So if he comes back next year, it will be late in the season. And, you know, Lord knows how he returns from another surgery that's significant. When your game is kind of predicated on speed like his is, that's a really tough thing to endure and to come back from. I wish him all the best. He's by all accounts, a very good guy and a really good teammate, and was really off to a great start to his career. And now he's had two major knee injuries. I guess the only good thing about all of this is that these things do get repaired now. If this had been 30 or 40 years ago, his career would have already been over. So that's just more bad news for the Cowboys. I just don't know how much more they can endure like this. It just feels like the karma train just crashed into them this season. Everything that could possibly go wrong has gone wrong.
Luck is the residue of good preparation, right? So what is bad karma is the residue of?
Some residue of something. There's some residue on the Cowboys, that's for sure.
There's definitely that.
I think actually luck is the residue of design.
But listen, you end up with a player that you just re-signed back in the middle of a big play and tries to make a big play and not a smart play. I mean, I don't know. Don't the Cowboys show the Leon Lett fumble in their orientation video?
Yeah, that came up for sure during the broadcast. Shades of Leon Lett. At least that was a team going places.
Right.
This one's going nowhere.
It adds to I think the way you summed up this season earlier, if you can't be good, at least be entertaining. And you do. The Cowboys, for no other reason, you should tune into the Cowboys to see what kind of trash pops up there next.
It's just unbelievable. And here's the thing about it on special teams. Well, and everything in football. And listen, I understand when there's a lot of emotion involved, and the way Mike McCarthy was trying to excuse the thing was that, well, he heard the crowd yell, he had his back turned, and then he turned back around, realizing that the punt had been blocked. And so then,
there's no great way to handle that after the game because it's a crushing play. But listen, I think everybody who watches the game knows that it's not acceptable, right? It's not acceptable. And the bad thing is it speaks to this organization right now where it is. It's just not very disciplined. It doesn't make smart plays. And I don't know what Mike McCarthy could have said in response to all of that after the game Monday night, but I think whatever it was, there was going to be criticism because it's just an unacceptable play.
Well, that's the thing about these Cowboys that bothers me is that, and we've talked about this before, and I brought up the Gordon Wood story about how, every play that when his high school team at Brownwood, if they made a play, if they made an error on a play, if one person makes an error on a play, they run the play again. And to me, that's the kind of discipline it requires. You can tell players that this is what, we do, and this is how we're going to do it. But you can't always assume they're going to know what it is that they're supposed to be doing, right? You want them to understand. It's almost as if you want to say to them, I want you to show me now. If this happens, what do you do in this situation? And but I can tell you, Evan, over the years, how many times have you seen a kickoff and a pooch kick and the ball's bouncing along, and all of a sudden you see the home team guy run over close to the ball. It's like you just want to scream at the TV or from the press box, get away from the ball.
But
what are you doing?
Kevin, we talk about that all the time in baseball. We talk about slow heartbeats. Guys take ground balls all the time in spring training, before games, and then they get a routine ground ball or a semi not routine ground ball, and all of a sudden the game speeds up on them and they do everything not fundamentally correctly. And that's just what happens in sports is the moment gets too big for guys. And in baseball, we talk about 5 tools. I'm not sure what all the tools would be in football, but either way, the measurable that we can't ever measure is how guys respond to in the moment pressure. And the Cowboys just don't have guys who are great at that.
No, they don't. And this is all part of
that's an evaluation, right? It is an evaluation. I do think it speaks to their evaluations.
Well, listen, we know all this, and I'm not going to say that they aren't smart or whatever. We don't have the access to their IQ scores. We don't know anything about any of this stuff.
It has nothing to do with smarts.
Well, it doesn't, but it has to do with coachability and are you a coachable player? And these are the kind of things that I'm assuming the Cowboys are looking for, but I can't be sure of that. In their evaluation process, I don't know if they're looking at more at the measurables. The things that size, speed, length, all that kind of stuff, or how much do you put into a player who's going to really work hard? You've done background stuff on him, coachable, going to do all the right things. Sometimes you what you can tell is that if you don't have, let's say, your salary cap and you're being restricted somewhat because of that, because you're paying some players so much money, you don't have for others. You kind of will take a chance on a player if that player has a little something extra. I'm going to use an example of a guy like Devontae Turpin, who obviously is a terrific special teams player and an occasional threat as a wide receiver. There's nothing wrong with him whatsoever, except that he's a little wild on special teams as well, even on that great punt the kick return he had for 91 yards or 99 yards for a touchdown. The ball went between his legs first,
Right.
and so that was almost a catastrophe, and he turns it into that. That's kind of what Kevontae Turpin does.
There's a sliding scale, right? Some guys tilt more towards skill, some guys tilt more towards instinct. To
me, personally, I'd rather have a team that's not going to make mistakes. I sacrifice a little bit of somebody's athletic ability if I know that this person is going to make all the plays I want. I've always said that about a shortstop. I don't care what your range is. If you're going to make a lot of errors, I don't want that. I'd rather have a guy who makes all the plays he's supposed to make and maybe a couple extra. And then if we get that, then fine. And that's
be predictable, right? This is the thing on the baseball side. This is the thing I think that drives you nuts about Leody Taveras. Unpredictable. You don't know what he's going to do from game to game. Same thing applies. Managers and coaches want predictability. They want to know that in that situation, get out of the way. Know that you've got to get out of the way. Don't try and make plays bigger than you. And I hate to keep coming back to this, but I look at this Cowboys team. I look at how penalized they have been over the last few years. I look at the kinds of mistakes that they have made, and it all comes down to me that this is a rather undisciplined team, and I don't know if that speaks to coaching or messaging or the players, but undisciplined it's a bad label. It's a bad label for a player or a team.
It is. And so that brings us to the bigger question here, because look, the Cowboys were not going anywhere. We knew that. As a matter of fact, things have gotten so bleak for the Cowboys that Carolina is the favorite going into the game this next week. That breaks a streak in which the Panthers have been the underdogs in 33 straight games. So this would be the first time they have been the favorite in a game in almost 3 years, or 2 years anyway. So that tells you something not good about the Cowboys' predicament. The thing for me here is that last week, Troy Aikman, who certainly I respect Troy's opinion on anything to do with football, and I have it's one of the reasons why I was kind of defended Dak Prescott for much of his career is because Troy has always stood by, as Roger Staubach has. That's two pretty good quarterbacks to have in your corner, and I think they're being honest about the things they said about Dak. At any rate, the other day, Troy said on the radio that if you were looking for another coach for the Cowboys, other than Bill Belichick, you're not going to find one with a better resume. And he thinks that the Cowboys are really not that all far away from being contenders again, and that they just had a lot of bad luck, a lot of bad injuries this year, and some bad decision-making in the offseason as well, particularly about the running game and not getting somebody. Although now we see, Rico Dowdle seems just fine all of a sudden as a running back. He's had 3 100-yard games now. I think that speaks to the fact that their offensive line is finally starting to kind of gel a little bit, even though it is such a patchwork line. It's hard to imagine that. Tyler Guyton didn't even start at left tackle. Chuma Edoga did. And also Zach Martin didn't play at right guard. So you would think that, well, how could it be any better? Well, apparently it is better, because I don't think Dowdle's gotten any better. He's the same running back he always was. So this kind of tells you that probably the heart of the Cowboys' problems, offense anyway, all year long, were essentially in the offensive line, even though I think they could still upgrade at running back in the draft. But so the question for me is now, Evan, since Troy said that, and we have just kind of basically said all along this season that we think that Jerry Jones is looking for any reason possible to fire Mike McCarthy. He didn't re-sign him. He's in the last year of his contract. But Troy says he thinks that Jerry would like to keep him. So let me ask you that. If that comes out that he keeps him, how will you feel about the Cowboys going into the next season?
I just don't see how you can keep him.
I think he's past the point of being kept at this. And I think that's a great point to make, is that at some point you have to consider the fan factor. How do you think that would go over with the fans and your ticket buyers to say, yeah, not only are you bringing him back, because can you really give him a 1-year contract?
Right.
I
mean, you can't extend a guy by 1 year and go through this whole contract year thing again next year. And I do think, the things that I look at when we talk about championship, Mike McCarthy was brought in here to win a championship, right? This is his, fourth season or fifth season?
This is his fifth season.
He has not advanced to an NFC championship game. It may not be fair, but he's had the opportunity. And I just don't think that if you're Jerry, for the fan, for where this is right now, and you're not going to get rid of your general manager for the 158th time, I don't see how you can bring the coach back and have any credibility with your fan base, or nationally, quite frankly.
No, I don't think so either. I mean, it's one thing if you didn't think you had a choice. I think you clearly have a choice. That whole Bill Belichick thing going to North Carolina, I guess that was a big ruse, huh? He's interviewed with them apparently twice, and he still hasn't taken the job. Do you think that North Carolina would have any qualms about offering that job to Bill Belichick? No.
The Bill Belichick to North Carolina thing makes zero sense to me. You just got rid of a coach who was in his 70s and maybe seemed to be somewhat losing his touch on football. Why would you hire another coach in his 70s? Hasn't coached in colleges in God knows how long. The only thing I was thinking about was Bill Belichick's 24-year-old girlfriend wanted to go do some postgraduate studies. That was the only thing I could
you like that line. You were just dying to use it.
It doesn't make sense to me. And I think you want a younger coach if you're North Carolina. But if they want to offer him the job, they want to offer him the job. To me, it all smacks of Belichick trying to send a message publicly to Jerry, shoot your shot.
Well, for sure. Look, here's the thing. I don't want to be someone who's 68 years old. I don't want to talk about ageism here. If a guy can coach, he can coach. It's not just because they're both in their 70s doesn't mean they're the same coach either. For all of his fine qualities, Mac Brown was not a guy you would think of as a disciplinarian. Is not a guy that he does not bring the same skill set that Bill Belichick does. Right. Frankly, I would rather have Mac Brown as my college coach than Bill Belichick, because at least he understands boosters and NIL and all the rest of the stuff, which Bill Belichick will have nothing to do with, clearly. But my point is that he was just obviously doing that for grins, right? To do that and maybe to goose Jerry to do something here. To me, the one thing that I would want Bill Belichick to bring to this team is the one thing that it needs is discipline. I think that if Bill Belichick is the coach of this team, everything's going to be buttoned up. We have to do. Have we got everything done right? He's not going to let Bones Fossil talk him into crazy things and crazy decisions about stuff to do on the field. I know that Fossil has a great reputation in the NFL as a special teams coach, but once again, it comes off to me as, are you doing all the fundamental things right? All the bells and whistles and the blocks and the fakes and all the fake punts and whatever, all that kind of stuff. You're not doing that all the time. You just do that occasionally. And when the Cowboys have done it this year, they have screwed it up. I would rather know that they were going to do everything right.
Here's my question on this is, I think we all look at Belichick as a hard ass, right? No BS. He's not going to put up with any of that, yada, yada, yada. And I don't know in this day and age if that guy can reach the NFL player. He's a great X's and O's coach. I don't know if you need a different skill set to relate to these players. And
I tell you why I think he does. Because of those 8 Super Bowls.
Yeah, he has.
That's the difference. You can do that kind of thing, just like Nick Saban. Nick Saban was a hard ass too, but did did players still come there and play for him? Was he still getting top recruits? Yes, he was, because these players knew this guy will get me in the NFL. I will win championships and go to the NFL. If you have the resume and the credibility, yes, I think you can get away with it. Not everybody can. That's the question. My backup pick was Mike Vrabel. Obviously he's from the Belichick tree. I think he would be a really good choice. Is he going to have a harder time selling that kind of? I don't think he's that same kind of coach, but he probably leans that direction a little bit. Can he sell that as much as Bill Belichick can? No, he can't, because he doesn't have 8 Lombardis. So that's the difference to me. That if these guys will respond to that if they know that's what's coming. Now, does it mean they're going to win? I don't know. We've seen what history has said about guys winning Super Bowls at multiple stops, Super Bowls with multiple quarterbacks. It's pretty much married to one coach, one quarterback.
Right.
But it doesn't mean you don't go ahead and try that again. I mean, I hear what everybody's saying. You need a younger coach. Look at this Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator of the Lions. He's the new hot commodity. He'll probably get a head coaching job, I'm guessing. And look what McVay did. Sean McVay did for the Rams. Won a Super Bowl. Brilliant young mind. And yes, I get that. I just don't trust the Cowboys to find one.
Right.
That's the thing. I think that I'd rather see them go out and get a guy who's done it before. For everything that Mike McCarthy has done wrong, he did have 3 12-win seasons. I give him credit for that. I give him credit for getting the team headed in the right direction. They simply couldn't push it past the goal line. And there's just been, throughout Mike McCarthy's tenure here, it's just kind of been one embarrassing moment after another, even in those 12-win seasons, because of the way the seasons ended. We remember the playoff where Dak's trying to get to spike the ball, get off one last play, and the clock expires and they can't get the playoff. That is embarrassing. The Cowboys have had too many of those kind of embarrassing moments under Mike McCarthy. Yeah. Whether that was just bad karma or bad luck, I don't know what it is, but it has kind of been a defining thing about his tenure as the head coach of the Cowboys.
I don't have anything to add to that. I kind of agree with you.
Yeah, I just think that the two things are, no matter how much Jerry wants to keep him, he cannot sell him to this fan base. The time has come and gone. When Tim Cowlishaw has written columns saying that Bill Belichick should be the coach, when I've written a column saying that the stuff just blows up. This is what the fan base, and there's a lot of people who don't like the idea of Bill Belichick either. But the point is that everybody's ready for it to be somebody else.
Right.
And I just think that Jerry, nothing moves Jerry like the sound of people walking away from his.
And I would agree with all this. I would also say that there is one point here, and the point for me, and I do think we've passed this point on McCarthy, but there does come a point where you have to say, I'm not going to be motivated entirely by the emotional fan. I'm going to do what I need to do, even if that makes me a little bit less popular. But I just do think that at this point, the way this season was set up and the way this season has taken place, and the fact that the Cowboys' problems, forget about the injuries for a moment, the Cowboys' problems of shooting themselves in the foot has only seemed to increase this year. To me, that just means that you don't really have a choice.
No. But then I'm going to disagree with you what you said about Jerry. Jerry's never going to be the guy to try to do the right thing. He's going to try to do the most.
No, I didn't say that Jerry is the guy to do the right thing. I just said that to operate a sports franchise proper way, at some point in time, you have to also be willing to say this may not be popular with fans, but it's the right call for the franchise.
Yeah. I don't think that Jerry ever thinks that way.
No, I don't.
I think that Jerry is going to do what he wants to do if it's going to make him look better.
Well, we know that. I mean, we know what the situation is there.
It's just like him keeping Jason Garrett for so long. He was determined that Jason was going to be his Tom Landry, and that just never worked out. So
right.
So anyway, the Cowboys dither on. It's just remarkable in this season to watch the Cowboys play like they do. It's just it's almost like you're waiting for something like this to happen over the course of the game. And last night, late in the game, they really played pretty well the entire game. Defense had played great. Offense had played okay. It was one of their better games. Even though the Bengals' record is just 5-8, the Bengals, they got a lot of talent on offense. Their problem is they don't have much talent on defense. But the Bengals soldier on, and the Cowboys are on their way to oblivion. All right, that's going to do it for the Cowboys segment of our podcast. Now we're going to talk about colleges.
At Texas Capital, we know that the path to greatness isn't for the faint of heart. It's full of chances and opportunities with no promises. We know because we help clients and communities achieve greatness every day. Texas Capital is a full-service financial services firm founded and headquartered in Dallas, Texas. Our customized solutions were built to keep your business moving forward. Please visit texascapital.com to learn more. That's texascapital.com. Texas Capital is the collective brand name for the Texas Capital Bank and its separate non-affiliate banks and wholly owned subsidiaries. For deposit products, member FDIC.
Evan and I went to Atlanta over the weekend. Evan's home stomping grounds. He showed me all the sites. He showed me where he had his first date. His first date. That was at the mall over there, where it was right across the street from the hotel that we stayed at. What was that mall, Evan?
Lenox Square Mall, Kevin.
And what was the name of your date?
Judy.
Judy?
Yeah.
Judy,
We'll just leave it at Judy.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll protect the names of the innocent.
Yeah, she's not so innocent if she was going out with you. How'd that whole thing end with you and Judy?
We danced to Freebird at the dance that night, like every Southern couple does in the 1980s.
That's not a good song to dance to.
With me ordering some French onion soup at dinner, which probably was not the most romantic move in the world. But look, I was just getting experience. I was just gearing up for one day meeting Gina.
Yeah, that's right, meeting Gina. That was much later.
Did you not ever dance to Freebird at the end of any of your dances?
First of all, it's impossible to dance to Freebird. It changes speed as you get to the end of it. And then what are we supposed to start doing then? We're all slow dancing. And then now we're supposed to just speed up now?
It does, Kevin, it has nothing to do with what's danceable. It has to do with the fact that you grew up in the South in the 70s and 80s, and Freebird was apparently a national anthem.
Yeah, I guess so, especially where you were from, over there, all those Hicks over there, and Hicks and the Sticks. And then let's see, what else did we do while we were there? We had a meal with our pals, Cedric Golden and Kirk Bowles, Austin and Houston. They both are living in Austin, working there.
We did that. We also covered a football game.
We also covered a football game. And not a very good game, but it was an entertaining game. It had its moments here and there. In the first half, Texas dominated Georgia. Dominated them. In the first half and Evan looked all this up. In the first half of the first game Texas played against Georgia, Ewers threw for 17 yards. Had to be replaced at one point by Arch Manning. It was just going so poorly. He threw for, I think, 228 yards in the first half?
228 in the first half, yeah.
The other day, and all they had was 6 points. Part of the problem was they weren't running the ball, and that was really the whole problem of the game. They ran for 29 yards the first time against Georgia. They improved to 31 yards this time.
Yeah, but Kevin, I mean, the thing for me that was so problematic about it was, the first game against Georgia, they did have trouble running the ball, without a doubt. It seemed like the Texas offense changed for the better, particularly where it came to running the ball after that Georgia game. And they had come into the SEC championship game coming off of 240 and 250-yard games on the ground. And Georgia had been on the reverse track defensively. They had gotten worse and worse as the season had gone on and had given up 220 yards to UMass and then 260 yards in that 8 overtime game to Georgia Tech, in which Haynes King, running an RPO, just, ran them ragged. And so for me, the biggest surprise and the biggest tactical mistake for Texas, I thought, was coming in and not running the ball right at Georgia and saying, we're going to assert ourselves. We didn't keep track of how much Georgia had in the box on every play. You seem to think that Georgia was loading it up with defensive linemen and linebackers. I just felt like no matter what Georgia had done, and I had watched them a lot this season, it just didn't seem like they were able to stop the run. And I think Texas gave them too much credit there.
Well, I mean, on the first drive, they were just throwing the ball down the field, but they were having a lot of success doing it. And that is, look,
true.
No matter what he says about anything, Sark wants to throw the ball. You
Right.
know, he can say that, well, I coached in the SEC because he did 2 years at Alabama and all that. That wasn't a lot in Alabama. He coached on the West Coast, right? And that's throwing the ball. So that's who he is, and that's what he wants to do always. So I will say, though, now I had to look to see how many times they actually ran the ball. For some reason, I've got in my mind 25 times, 31 yards. It was a 1.1 yard average.
They've averaged 1.1 yards in both games.
Yeah, so it's terrible. They didn't have much success at it. Why? You know, part of the problem is, and I listened to after the game, Aaron Murray, you know, and he was kind of dissecting the game a little bit, former quarterback, and you know, he was pointing out that, of course, they also had 6 sacks. So they sacked him 6 times this game, sacked him 7 times in the game in October. So that's 13 sacks in 2 games. Quinn Ewers is just an immobile quarterback. You know, he even when he gets out of the pocket, he's struggling when he does that. How much of that is due to the ankle? You know, he was never one to run very much. He is a little slower now because of the bad right ankle. That's an issue for him. It seems to me what Georgia is doing is they're selling out on this. We're gonna pin our ears back and go and get him, and he's not going to beat us that way. I saw there was some concerns from some people. Even Johnny Manziel was asked, "Were you surprised that they didn't put more Arch Manning in the game to give them a running threat at quarterback?" And yes, you probably could have done that, but the thing is, the man threw for 228 yards in the first half. That you got to score more than 6 points out of that. And so,
yes, and he was look. I mean, they didn't run the ball, but they were also. But Ewers was also let down. And I mean, to think that he threw for 228 yards and had egregious drops by just about every receiver, Gunnar Helm, Golden.
Isaiah Bond dropped the ball in the end zone. He was diving for it, but the ball's right there. It's a perfect throw. And that's the thing about Ewers.
And Isaiah Bond had the two penalties
yes.
that turned. They were both basically inside the red zone. I think one was at the 25, one was at the 21 on first down, put them back to 1st and 20, and took them out of a touchdown. Both of those ended up being the field goal drives, and they should have been up 14-0 instead of 6-3 at that point.
I do think also, and I'm not going to make excuses for them, I do think also that it's a home game for Georgia, right? And this, our old pal Jeff Miller brought this up to me, and I think it's a great point going forward. You know, obviously in the SEC, where are you going to have the title game other than Atlanta? There's no other choice, you know.
There was when it started.
Well, I mean, you could go to New Orleans to have it, but I'm talking if you're going to go to you got to go to a big city to have this. You got 2 choices. Well, they're not going to let them have it in New Orleans for whatever reason. And so it's Atlanta. Well, how unfair is that? Because I would say that crowd was about 75-25, you know, Georgia to Texas fans. And it was loud. I mean, my little thing on my watch was going off several times during the game. But even at that, I will give Steve Sarkisian credit. He did say at one point in the press conference afterwards that, you know, because the Malik Agbo had a false start on the field goal. How do you have a false start on a field goal is beyond me. Why are you moving before anyone starts running at you? It's not a running play. You know, just stand up. When someone starts running at you, stand up and block them. So that cost them a 37-yard field goal. And when they backed it up 5 yards, he missed from 42. Barely missed it, but he missed it. If you don't have a false start, the Longhorns win that game. They win it in regulation. It's over.
Yep.
That's it. So, I mean, that alone was embarrassing. They had a false start on a punt. They had, you know, Colin Simmons, who's a very good young player, but he was offsides on consecutive plays. How in the world, this kind of stuff, you know me, this kind of stuff blows me away. It just makes me crazy. You were just offsides. How could you do it again on the next play? How's that possible? And that's what I would have gone over and said to him on the sideline. How is this possible, son? How do you do this twice in a row? It's just mind-boggling. So they made, they had 11 penalties, which is season high for 94 yards. And then there were several penalties that were either offsetting penalties or Georgia declined to take them. So it was just because a couple of those times when they had the offsetting penalties, it was on plays where it had big gains for Texas. And yet, because of the offsetting penalties, they didn't get those. So, really, it would be interesting to look at all of that stuff. Not obviously, you're not going to have a mistake-free game, but if you were to look at all that, the score should have been in the 30s. It should have been 34-16. They really dominated Georgia, because then in the second half, even though they scored 19. Georgia scored 19 points in the second half behind Gunnar Stockton. Look at his numbers. He threw for 71 yards in the second half in overtime. That's not the kind of thing that should win a game for you, right?
Right.
Trevor Etienne was very good in the second half of that game. There's no question about that. Their running game did open up much more in the second half. I think probably by that time, Texas was not prepared for this. They'd done a great job against Carson Beck once again in the first half until he got hurt. And the crazy thing for me, Evan, and looking at this going forward, is that everybody keeps picking Georgia now to just basically mow right through this. I'm seeing most people are picking Georgia to win it all over Oregon. And we have no idea if Carson Beck's even going to be able to play again.
Yep. I mean, to me, look, the way that injury took place, it certainly looked like there was some degree of, and this is the baseball guy in me speaking, that there was some degree of UCL involvement in that. And I swear,
explain what that is, Evan, the UCL. Huh? Explain what that is, the UCL.
That's the ulnar collateral ligament.
And your elbow.
Your elbow.
Yes.
And I was, second half when I saw him on the sidelines, I was certain that he had an ice pack on that part of the arm. And if he's that's Brock Purdy. I mean, that's the injury Brock Purdy had. So I don't know how Georgia would respond if Carson Beck is unable to play. I also have seen a lot of people talking about what an easy road Georgia has. Well, I think Notre Dame is going to throttle Indiana, and then playing Notre Dame is never easy. So that is, you can say what you want. That's still a challenging football game. What Stockton did do was ran the ball well a few times. And look, I feel like when Georgia stopped them and held them to 6 points, and then they got the emotional stuff about Beck at halftime, I think they just came out as a much more motivated team in the second half.
Well, I don't think there's any question of that. And I do think what we saw, look, what's going to happen now is teams are going to have film on Gunnar Stockton now, and they're going to study that. They're going to see how to stop him. You saw when he was under pressure, he did not look good. Now, a couple of times he did roll out and made a couple of nice plays and had a really great throw and really great catch, a toe tap by Delt going out of bounds one time. But the interception was a terrible play. Jahdae Barron's catch, he just threw that up for grabs.
And the fumble that he had where the ball went out of bounds.
Yes, exactly. That ball was like a 50-yard fumble. I don't know if I've ever seen a ball fumbled further than that. So I guess the question we should ask now, how do you feel about Texas going forward?
Listen, I mean, I don't know how to explain to you. Like, I've seen Texas play Georgia twice. I expected Texas to dominate both of those games, and I saw them lose, and I'm still not entirely sure how they did it. I think Texas is as talented as any team in the country. We've not been in this situation before, as far as the playoff goes, but having to play 4 games to win a national championship is a lot.
It is a lot. The worst part about this for Texas, in my mind, is the fact that you just simply have to play another game. They were going to have a bye if they'd won that game, of course, and now they're going to play Clemson at home. I think they beat Clemson, and I think they beat them fairly handily. And then if they win that game, then they move over, and then they get the winner, and let's see, I'm looking at my bracket here.
They'd have Arizona State.
They have Arizona State. Arizona State's playing better now, certainly, and they have one of the nation's best running backs in Cam Scatterboop. But I don't really believe in Arizona State. They lost to Texas Tech. I'm really struggling with that. The thing here, if you looked on the ESPN bet odds, the way they have it set up, that Texas has the second easiest path to the title, other than Penn State, and of the teams that are playing that first round game. But even the teams that are playing that have a bye the first week some of them have tough games their first game. So I do think that it sets up pretty well for Texas. I think it sets up well for SMU. The same thing, if they can beat Penn State this week, then they get Boise. I think that they're better than Boise. I think, obviously, they have a wonderful running back in Ashton Jeanty, but I think that what we saw at the end of that game, even though he didn't play well in the first half, Kevin Jennings was phenomenal in the second half, and on that last drive. I mean, his ability to get out of trouble, that is going to be. I would love for the committee to have set up this first round game between Texas and SMU.
I would have too.
It made all the sense in the world to do it. I mean, they did it with Indiana and Notre Dame. I'm not saying they set it up for that, but the whole idea, or one of the concerns, I should say, of the playoffs was that, we don't want fans to have to travel too much. If you're going to, if 4 games, if that's what it ends up being, that's a lot to ask fans to do. Well, you had the opportunity to have fans that are 3 hours apart from each other. And plus the intrigue of an old Southwest Conference rivalry. I'd have to go back and look the last time they played. I'm sure the last time they played must have been before the conference broke up. The Southwest Conference broke up. I don't think they've played them since then. Maybe not. At any rate, the study and contrast between the two quarterbacks will be phenomenal. The fact that Jennings throws so well on the run. He's got a terrific arm. Throws so well on the run. Some of those throws he made on the run, pinpoint passes to the sideline, tremendous plays. Now, we know he's also capable of making some mistakes, as he did in the first quarter, in the first half, when Clemson went up 21-7. But the fact that he brought his team back from that, I can only say, first of all, why did you kick off at the end of the game, Rhett Lashley? Why not squib kick that, make them pick it up, exhaust the clock a little bit. They get the ball at the 35, no big deal. Don't give them the opportunity to run this ball all the way back. They didn't run it all the way back, but they ran it 46 yards, one pass, boom, and then the kid kicks the 56-yarder to win it.
Yep.
I mean, that's just a heartbreaking way to lose that game. But anyway, I do think that both of these teams, if they get past Penn State, then they got Boise, and then they'd have to play, listen, in the bottom half of the bracket right now, if Georgia really is impacted by the loss of Carson Beck, and if Gunnar Stockton's going to be the quarterback, that's not a bad place to be, is in that bottom half of the bracket. I do think Oregon is the real deal. They're still undefeated. We still haven't seen them be challenged, really. So that's going to be a little bit harder to get past them if they do, if Oregon beats the winner of the Tennessee-Ohio State game. But I will say this, too. This bracket is wide open. And now with Georgia, with the possible loss of their quarterback, yes, I know that Oregon has done a great job, but I also think the Big Ten was top-heavy this year. You had, a couple of 2 or 3 really good teams, and then it was kind of a little mushy in the middle, and then it was, of course, terrible at the bottom. It's not like the SEC at all, where it's such a grind every week, and you saw, maybe 7 or 8 teams that were really strong. Right. So I do think that there's just about anything that can happen here. I wouldn't be surprised, frankly, other than Clemson and Boise and Arizona State. I really think that everybody else has a shot, maybe a small shot, but a shot. And that's going to make this really fun to watch.
I would agree. I mean, I don't know that I believe in Indiana very much, and I don't know if SMU has got the depth to play 4 more games, but I do think it's pretty wide open.
Yeah, the thing about SMU, and we talked about that before, is how much speed they have. They are really fast, and they have to play their game. Whoever they play, that's the great thing about this. I don't know how dominant Penn State's lines are, and so and the weather. I haven't checked the weather, what it's supposed to be like on the 15th, or not the 15th, on the 21st. Did they play on the 21st or the 20th? I'd have to look. But you can't imagine it's going to be too good in that game. They also have if their fans can drum it up, they have a little bit of an emotional factor here. I talked to some people the other day. If you remember this, Evan, in 1982, SMU, Georgia was number 1 for most of the season. SMU was number 2 for about 3 or 4 weeks. And then they tied Arkansas in their last regular season game. Kind of controversial thing where Bobby Collins didn't go for 2 and kick the extra point. But he knew by taking the tie that he would be in the Cotton Bowl because they would be the Southwest Conference champions. At any rate, then when the next rankings came out, they dropped SMU to 4, and Penn State jumped to 2, and they had a loss against Alabama, an Alabama team that went 7-4. They got blown out by Alabama. And then when in the bowl games, Georgia lost, Penn State won, SMU won, beat Pitt 7-3 in the Cotton Bowl in miserable circumstances there, miserable weather. Dan Marino could hardly even hold on to the ball. And Penn State won the national championship, even though SMU was 11-0-1. There's been always a lot of controversy about that, about how could the team that was undefeated didn't get the championship. Well, Joe Paterno had 3 teams that had been undefeated, and he didn't win the championships in any of those years. And there was a feeling out there that we just want to give this one to Joe Pa and SMU. They'd been on probation the year before, and those guys should have. If Bobby Collins really wanted to win it all, he should have gone for 2 instead of kicking the extra point. Sure. So there's a little bitterness among the old SMU fans about Penn State. So that's why makes it a little bit interesting, even more interesting than it is just from the standpoint that they're in the playoffs and playing them.
I'm really excited. It's been an exciting season, and I'm excited to see where this playoff goes.
Yeah, me too. It'll be a lot of fun, and we'll see. And we'll be out there. Evan and I will be down in Austin for the game against Clemson. And then the plan is if they keep winning, we'll keep going. We'll follow them wherever they go at SMU as well. Tim Kalishaw and Leah Simakopoulos will be there at that game in Happy Valley. And the Dallas Morning News will be all over these teams, which is at least some real football being played in Texas, even if it's not being played professionally.
Correct.
They are being paid professionally, but it's not being played professionally.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's going to do it for our podcast this week. We thank you for tuning in. Be back next week. That'll be our last podcast of the year because we're not doing one on Christmas Eve. We'd love to put that in your stocking, but no, we're not doing that. We're going to take that one off. So from everybody in here to everybody out there, thanks, and we'll see you next time.